Hi guys, welcome to my video on my podcast. The way we're gonna do it is my interview is kind of shy to be on camera, so I'm just gonna show my face, and she's gonna be right next to me, and I'm gonna just be right here. Well, we're gonna start the video. Well, hey everyone, welcome to today's discussion on gender and society. I am Christian Garcia, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Nicole, who has a unique perspective on gender issues. We're going to dive in into some thought-provoking conversation based on a recent course material and explore a variety of gender related topics. Thank you so much for joining me today, Nicole.
Thanks for having me, Christian. I'm excited to discuss the important topic with you.
Okay, well, to give our audience some context, in class we've been studying how gender is not just a biological fact but a social construct. Gender roles have shifted significantly in recent decades, especially with movements for gender equality and LGBTQ plus rights. But even today, we will still see people pushing back against these shifts. Nicole, what's your perspective on gender roles in today's society?
I think gender roles are still pretty ingrained in most societies, but there are more conversations now about breaking down those traditional barriers. That being said, I think a lot of people hold on to those old fashioned views even when they say they don't.
That's actually really interesting. You're right, gender roles are deeply embedded, and even though progress has been made, many people still find it difficult to let go of traditional ideas. For instance, when we look at media today, women are being portrayed in roles they historically weren't, like strong, independent heroes, but are these portrays truly breaking the mold, or are they reinforcing stereotypes in a new form?
I think it's a bit of both. We're seeing more women in leadership positions in movies, which is a positive change. But at the same time, they're often still portrayed in a very stereotypical ways, like being the lone wolf or having to prove themselves. It's like they have to work harder to be accepted, almost as if their being women automatically makes you less compatible.
Exactly, it's like these strong female characters are often framed as being strong for a woman rather than just strong. And it reinforces the idea that women still need to overcome their gender to succeed. But on the other hand, these portrayals do show that women can be in leadership roles, which wasn't a common in the past. But where do you stand on the representation of men in media? Are men still expected to fit in those traditional molds, or are we seeing changes there as well?
Men are still very much expected to follow certain traditional roles, strong, unemotional, and always in control. But recently, we've been started to see a shift where men are shown being more vulnerable and emotional, which is a positive change.
Yes, and I think that's one of the key changes happening now. Now, the idea that men can express emotions or have vulnerability is becoming more accepted. It's still being seen as break from tradition. It's strange to think that expressing your emotions is still considered a break from what's expected of you. Do you think there's more social pressure for men to conform to these traditional roles than women?
In some ways, yes. There's still this expectations for men to providers and protectors, and if they don't live up to that, it's often seen as a failure. Women, on the other hand, have more flexibility today in how they're expected to behave, but they still have to deal with the double standards of being judged more harshly for things like their appearance.
Of course, and I totally see where you're coming from. I mean, it's a very good point. It's interesting to see how these roles are still holding weight, but now there's also this growing recognition of non-binary gender fluid identities. I've noticed that in the mainstream media and even in politics, people are increasingly talking about gender beyond just male and female. Do you think society is ready to accept non-binary identities, or is there still a lot of pushback?
There's definitely pushback. I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand that gender isn't just male or female. It's challenging for some to accept that it's more a spectrum, not something right. But I do think there's more awareness now that there was, say, 5 or 10 years ago.
Absolutely, there's definitely more awareness now, but it's still controversial, right? And I think that's where a lot of tension lies. Some people are uncomfortable with the idea of gender fluidity because they've always been taught that there are only two genders. But do you think that gender norms are really as rigid as people make them out to be?
In some ways, yes, people are uncomfortable with things that they don't fully understand, but I think it's more people had open conversations about gender identity. There might be less fear or resistance.
I totally agree with you. Education is key in breaking down these rigid gender norms. Social media has played a big role in bringing these issues to light. On one hand, it can be a great platform for marginalized voices to be heard. On the other hand, it can reinforce harmful stereotypes. What's your take on the role of social media in shaping how we think about gender?
Social media is a double edged sword. It definitely gives a lot of people a platform to discuss issues they otherwise wouldn't. But at the same time, it can amplify harmful stereotypes and misinformation. I think it all depends on how we use it. For instance, social media has helped normalize conversations about non-binary people, but it can also be placed for hateful.
I think it's very interesting to see how people think about how gender and how people see these things very differently. I for sure think that coming from a very like Hispanic background, it is more harder for us to, not necessarily for us, but like in family tradition to understand that there's more than two genders, just because we are, well, our parents have been taught to there's only a man and a female, and obviously in today's society we don't see it that way no more, just because we see more than two genders, and when we try to explain it to them, they really don't understand that part. And coming like I said, coming from a very like Hispanic household, like I try to explain like to my family and my parents how there is more than two genders, and they're like, no, like it's only two. Like they think I'm like some kind of lunatic when I tell them that there's more than two genders. Like if I'm thinking something wrong. What do you think about that, my interviewer Nicole?
I think you're right, but I think you need to also see that there could be more than. Wait, where are these? I think you need to understand that there could be more than just a female and a male, and I get that other parents have a different perspective and tend to pass it on to their children and try to only see it that way, especially their beliefs in God. Is kind of hard to go against that.
Is that all you have to say?
Yes.
Alright, so example, like going back to what I'm saying. So, I mean, one of the first things that really stood out to me in this course was the idea that gender is not just binary concept; it's much more fluid. For so long, we've been conditioned to think of gender in terms of just two options, male and female. But what if we think of gender as spectrum, a range of identities that don't fit neatly into boxes? It's pretty eye-opening, right? I think that if we were to like dive deep in more like into this topic, we'll for sure like never have like an ending, just because like we obviously see things very differently. Example, like my interview, like we would have to convince people, well, not really convince people, but like educate people that it doesn't really like, at the end of the day, we can all do whatever we want. We have no control and we have no say on how people want to live their lives, or how we should tell people how to live their lives, if that makes sense. Like if someone considers them to be a trans, we have no say in that. Just accept them for who they are, as long as they're not doing you harm or not causing any pain in your life. And I think that's what people like misinterpret. Like if someone wants to be whatever they want, like let them be. Like it's not like they're causing you pain. It's not like they're trying to tell you who you are. It's them trying to live their lives instead of. And that's what people don't understand. Like they think that just because someone wants to be trans or someone wants to like be considered whatever they want, is like they think they're attacking you. I was like, no, like they just want to live their lives. And I think that's what we should all really like understand. But going back to my interview, if I was telling her, it's like, I mean, before we even like started this video, we had to like talk about what we really thought and how we were gonna like really explain this interview, just because I just wanted to see what type of mentality she had. I mean, at the end of the day, it's clear that gender is still a very complicated issue in society. I mean, we've come a long way, but there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of breaking down traditional gender roles and making space for all gender identities. What do you think is the next step in ensuring gender equality, to my interviewee?
I think the next step is continuing the conversation, especially with younger generations. The more we talk about gender as a spectrum and not just a binary, the more people will understand. Education is key, and so is leading by example.
I agree, and I think it's more important to keep pushing for a change in media, politics, and education. The more we normalize different gender identities, the more society will be willing to accept them. Thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing your insights today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone for tuning in today's podcast. Keep the conversation going and stay open minded. And remember, gender is not just a label, it's a spectrum. Until next time.